So I'm having to finish this documentary at home. So Friday, I finished it, and I premiered it for my housemates who I live with down here, and they all gave me good feedback. And I was like, okay, clearly I got to redo a sound mix. I wanted to put it up Friday, but I said, I came this far. So what I've got to do now is I have to get it right. I can't just rush it out because it's the day, I said. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do one more render. And that turned into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 renders. Because I kept catching stuff. I was like, well, if I'm making these changes, got to make that change too. And I did a whole day, 6 hours probably of narration, where I like recorded, edited. And I listened to it and I watched it. Just didn't feel right. And we talked about this a little bit before. So anybody who's done narration, anybody who's edited, or if you haven't, I'm going to do just like a crash course and kind of how that goes for a film. And so, you had asked me, well, do you think it was because you were up against it, you had a deadline, did you just want to get it done and decide, well, maybe you couldn't spend as much time as you wanted to at this point, which that was partially true, yes. But the bigger issue was I didn't start with narration in mind. So in January, when I started this edit, I should have said, okay, I need to figure out the story, and then I need to kind of tell it and decide on my music, my narration, and how much wild sounds, which is natural environment sound you see is going to be in this. This is what Ken Burns does. He'll build his whole audio track first, put it in time, and then he'll decide to say, okay, I got interviews here, I got music here, this scene's gonna last this long. So it's like he's doing the puzzle upside down. You can't see what it looks like, but in his mind he can see it. He's like, well, I just need a great drone shot here. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gotta be right here. And so I did it the opposite, where I put all the visuals first, because I was using basically found footage. I happened to film it, but it's found footage. Because I pulled a documentary out of a work trip, 2 work trips. The intention of the trip was not to shoot a doc, but I said, well, if in between I shoot enough stuff, I can probably tell a cool story that was like not exactly why we went, but it's kind of like all the BTS. So that's what I did. Cut down 20 hours to 1 hour, 23 minutes. And that's what I have now. So it was really hard at the end to put in any kind of narration that sounded like there was a thoughtful story there. It was really just like observation, and there were some key observations. And what I put out now is I felt like me, Max, Nas, a couple other people in there, they give enough tidbits and information and color to kind of paint the picture and tell you what's happening. Plus I added some titles, so like, what year it is, where you are. So I was happy that, once again, I feel like I'm always doing this, Frankensteining together with the pieces that I have to make a whole thing. And this is true of music and this is true of radio. The behind the scenes of the final product looks nothing like the final product. You're like, this thing's held together with duct tape, and there's WD-40, and there's wood paneling, and everybody's seeing a shiny looking iPhone. I don't know why that works, but it works. So I'm happy that it's complete.
It's so cool, man. And what an accomplishment. And I don't want to sound like a dummy here, but I can't be the only one listening to you tell the story right now that's wondering, who is Ken Burns and why is he important?
Okay. Well, this is good, because I feel like
educate me, dog.
This is a good thing too about how we always are like ranting about Gen Z. Well, and this is going to make sense here. Everything is cyclical. Fashion is cyclical, music. These things come back around. So what's coming back around now is, I saw a TikTok where now that Gen Z is rediscovering our tech from the 90s. They're surprised by, there's a little SD card you can put in your phone. It's like, yeah, that's what held the data.
Yeah.
And technically that's still kind of how it's held. It's held on something, but it's just part of the phone. You can't access it. So to that point, Ken Burns, right? The pan and zoom you've seen when people are always like, yeah, just, zoom it people call everything a zoom or a pan. Yeah, just pans up and down. No, that's a tilt. Pan in and out. No, that's a zoom. You can pan left and right. So inevitably, people
just pan in,
just
Dave.
Pan. Dude, just working corporate. With one more tangent, and I'll get to the real story. Working in corporate, people would just call everything a pan. They'd give me a script, and I'm like, "Wow, Peter Pan is all over this thing." They're like, "What do you mean?" No, he's not. This is about. I'm like, you just kind of missed that one. Every camera direction was a pan, and I'm like, "Are we just gonna do this the whole time?"
Yeah.
That's wild, but okay, let's try it. Let's try it your way and see what happens. So, back to the Ken Burns. This guy's made a ton of documentaries. He's actually from New Hampshire, so he's a New Englander like us.
The Granite State.
Yeah, dude, the Granite State. I bet a lot of people didn't know that.
I only know that because of Rob Steele, my radio mentor. Anytime, because you could hear the Q, my hometown station in New Hampshire, and we would get calls from there. Like, oh, this is Kelly. I'm over in whatever town, New Hampshire. And Rob will every single time, shout out to the Granite State. That's the only reason I know that.
Without fail. So, Ken Burns, documentary filmmaker. He's made a bunch of great ones. His are really, really long documentaries. He did one on the Civil War. It's 10 parts. It's like 11 hours long. He did one on jazz. He did one on baseball. Baseball's 10 parts. He did one, I think, on the Vietnam War. He's just done a ton. So the issue with doing what they would call like a period piece or something that happened a long time ago is you don't always have the footage, or it happened so long ago that there were no video cameras.
Yeah.
So you have to use photos. Man. So the Ken Burns effect is pan and zoom across an image. Like you would pan left and right, and at the same time you'd zoom in. So
it's kind of like modern day YouTube stuff. Like we see a lot of that, right?
Everything you see on YouTube, that's what they're doing. They're taking from, they probably honestly saw it in one of his documentaries and was like, great. And that's what I do with a lot of our stuff. I'm like, cool, if we can only use photos, that's fine. We can still make a move. So when I say the Ken Burns effect, what I mean is there's an image and it's moving slowly, and you hear the voiceover and the music, and you're like, well, I guess this is technically a moving image, even though it's not a movie. And so Ken Burns, but his style is audio first, visual second. And I watched his masterclass, and I was thinking, that's brilliant. I've never seen that before. But it forces you to lock your picture, and you have to.
Wow.
And he did that because, let's say there's a great piece of music, and it's like 5 minutes, 15 seconds, and it has to end. You can't just cut it off. Like the crescendo is the point of the music piece. Otherwise, it's ruined. Yeah. It's like leaving the best part out. So he would say, all right, I got to use all this. So I have to find visuals to fit everything to make sure it ends and like dips to black, and it's like, and it's over. And I used a lot of that in this documentary, but I couldn't do it perfectly like him because I didn't start with the audio. So long story short, Ken Burns, American documentary filmmaker. Some of you will go to sleep because it's a lot of historical stuff and it's just long-winded. But if you're a history buff like me, it's interesting. You can watch it for hours.